Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. Firstly, thank you, Ravi Shankar, for taking us through a story, if I may put it that way, of the People's Liberation Army of China, commonly known as the Chinese military. We've discussed what they have, how they fight. We've discussed what equipment they have. We've discussed their little bit on their culture. And now this is a very interesting episode to make us realize how they would fight with India. One of the biggest things, as General Shankar actually brought it to my notice, is the terrain factor, which will play a role. And that is something which is very, very important for us to understand what they have, what we have in front of us, how the whole terrain factor will come in play in any case when the balloon does go up between India and China. Thank you, sir, for joining me for this, again, very interesting discussion on a possibility of a war between India and China and the study of the terrain involved in it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adi, for calling me over. When people talk about war between nations or the PLA and Indian Army or the Indian Army and Pakistan, we almost discount the terrain. Long back when I was doing staff college, I was told in a plan, 60% of any plan is the terrain factor or the ground factor. Because you have to fight in the terrain. Even if it is the sea, it is a terrain. It's the sea. The sea also is a terrain in many manners. It has got its own characteristics. Different seas have different characteristics. So 60% is terrain, 30% is enemy, and 10% is yourself. We all often make the mistake of concentrating on this 10%, right, and the 30%, and leaving the 60% out. That is why I thought it is important that we understand if tomorrow there's a Sino-Indian conflict of any magnitude, it could be a small clash or it could be a all-out war. Where will it take place? It will take place only in the Himalayas. Even for that matter, a confrontation with the Pakistanis will be in the Himalayas. But today we'll discuss about the PLA and the terrain across the LAC, which we have to understand. Unless we understand this terrain, we will keep ascribing capabilities to the PLA which they don't have. Right? Or we will not understand how the capabilities of PLA will actually manifest on ground. Now, this what I'm going to put across to you today, and through whatever you ask me, is a product of my own experience, having served in almost all these places at some point of time or the other over the past 40 years. And of course, the analysis of various operational events which have taken place, right from 62. So we'll go over that and we'll highlight, there will be differences, smaller differences, sectoral differences, local differences from what I talk, but that's a different story.
Certainly, sir. We're going to talk in a very broad horizon, and that's something we should appreciate, because there can be differences in terms of an event here and there and stuff like that. So that's how life is. Nothing is sacrosanct in anything. But generally speaking, I think what you're saying is right, and it's something that needs to be understood with regards to the entire area that we are fighting, because this is going to be mountain warfare. If yes, sir. A lot many will say in 62 they were successful, but their whole doctrine
that's a different story.
Their whole doctrine has changed. We have a huge difference today. So times have changed, warfare has changed. So let's study today's warfare, sir. This video, I'd like to say right at the beginning, is going to be a bit long. The reason is that we're going to describe to you the entire geographical area and the effect of that geographical area on a battle scenario, in terms of the manpower, in terms of the weapons, in terms of operations, in terms of logistics, and 50 other things which I probably would not be able to even list out, which are important during a time of war. So I'd recommend all of you who's watching this to spare some time when you're watching this. Save to watch later in the YouTube, and take out some time to watch this very sparingly, so that you understand what these two countries have in front of them when you talk about a war challenge. Sir, would you like to add anything before we begin?
No, you need to have patience. to understand the battlefield.
Right, sir. My first question, so how would let's open out a discussion on understanding the Himalayas, right from the beginning. I think the general understanding of the Himalayas would be tall, rocky mountains with a lot of snow. And everybody pictures the Himalayas when either the picture in the mind is Ladakhi Himalayas or probably the Everest range, which is unforgiving. But what I see here is a very different sort of a terrain. Request you to take us through and also tell us what are the campaign seasons when we are talking about each one of those areas.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, definitely.
So,
right. What you see in front of you is the general map between India and China and the Tibetan Plateau interposed in between. If you notice, most of the major rivers of Asia flow through out of the Tibetan Plateau: Indus, Satluj, Ganges, the Sangpo or the Brahmaputra, the Yangtze, Mekong, Salween, and the Yellow River. And Tibet is called the water tower of Asia. That apart, what is of interest to us is this area with Indus on the left and the Yarlung Zampo or the Zampo. This line and south of it is the LAC and what we are really interested in. And of course, we are interested in the area beyond also. Okay. We'll just first go over the mountain ranges and then we will get to a few other things which people have to understand. Yeah. Can we have a picture of the mountain ranges? Now, if you look at these, this gives you the way the ranges run. On the northern end, you see the Pamir Knot. It is from the Pamir Knot that three major ranges, emanate. In fact, there are four, but we'll now stick to three as the effectors. One is the Hindu Kush, which goes off to the west, and it forms the border between Afpak, the Kunlun Mountains, which is the northern edge of the Tibetan Plateau, and then the Himalayas. Now, the Himalayas come down from the Karakorams and the greater Himalayas. It comes right up to the end of India, the eastern end, and then at this place called Namcha Bautara, which is a peak, which is in China. It's a 7,000 plus peak. The Himalayas thereafter start tapering down and swing right across the Naga Hills and the Patka Hills. When you look at the northernmost portion of Himalayas, which is the eastern Ladakh portion, you see that the Himalayas are broad and they run in about 4 to 5 ranges. From the north, the northernmost range is the Karakoram, the next range is the Ladakh range, then the Zanskar range, then the Great Himalayas range. And from the Great Himalayan range, you come to the Lesser Himalayas and the Shivaliks. Now, the Great Himalayas and the Lesser Himalayas are the highly snow-fed areas. When you go farther to the north, the Zanskar and Ladakh are also highly snowy areas. But when you go further, the Kailash range and beyond, they are at high altitude, but they are not that snowed. They are windswept mountains. Okay, so you see that they are very broad in the north, and the area is quite stable. There has not been any major, earthquakes and things like that in that area.
Mm.
Now you come down to the east. In the east, say Sikkim, Bhutan, Arunachal, the Himalayas are not that broad. They're just about 200, 250 kilometers wide. And they run in just two ranges, the Himalayas and the Shivaliks or the Duars, whichever way you call it, Okay, and the foothills, as they're known in Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, so this is how it is. And here, you have to understand, there's a big difference between the Himalayas to the north of the Himalayas and the south of the Himalayas. The terrain changes.
Mm.
And there's a big difference in the Himalayas, the eastern Himalayas and the western Himalayas. Western Himalayas is the eastern Ladakh. Eastern Himalayas is the Sikkim Darjeeling. And the central Himalayas, which is a little broader. It's normally known as the central sector. Now, just to put things in, you spoke of seasons. You must understand. The summer season, right, which is the campaign season in the western Himalayas or the eastern Ladakh, okay, the Karakoram range and all that, which is the best season, May to September. That's a time when in the eastern Himalayas, Sikkim, Arunachal, is all monsoon season. You can't do anything.
Hmm.
This the campaign season in the eastern Himalayas, in Sikkim, Arunachal, Bhutan, and all, starts in September to December. And that's the time when the western Himalayas pack up. So there is no connection between the two. You can't have one great campaign going throughout, right? So it has to be a disaggregated campaign. That great this thing might never happen. They might happen like it happened in '62, but that there was a different setting. Today, I don't think. Then you'll see that the western Himalayas are bare, devoid of cover, right? And tree line is very high. That means lesser oxygen there. Whereas in the eastern Himalayas, you have dense forests, right, in the lower this thing, and you'll also find that the tree line is lower. Tree line is between, the tree line starts going off at about 12 to 13,000 in the eastern Himalayas. In there, it starts going out about 9 to 10,000 feet. So that's a difference. The trees indicate to you the level of oxygen in that area. Okay. So you find that there's a marked difference. And the eastern Himalayas, which is the Sikkim, Darjeeling, they are less stable. They like cave in. And that is because of more moisture. Monsoons, high monsoons. Whereas there is no monsoon, it is more stable. Okay. And there's hardly any rainfall in the eastern Ladakh. The central Himalayas are in between the two. So you find that all these three sectors have three distinct features which we have to understand. Okay. In the central Himalayas, if I just put, you have three ranges: the Daladars, Shivaliks, and the Himalayas. Right. Now, beyond the greater Himalayas in the central sector and the eastern sector, and the Kailash range in the and the Karakorams in the northern sector, it's a Tibetan plateau. Right. It's a flat plateau. Now, I think we should see how the cross section runs of these plateaus. Right. This is the cross sectional view of the Himalayas in the north. If you see the various this thing, it comes from the Shivaliks, the middle Himalayas, the greater Himalayas, which is the crestline of Himalayas. Then you have all the other ranges. Beyond the Kailash range, you get the Tibetan plateau. Okay, right up to the Kunlun range. Okay, so this is the Tibetan plateau there, and that is quite broad. If you see, the Tibetan plateau there is as broad as the width of the Himalayan ranges. So the depth is more in the northern areas. So let's get to the southern. In the southern, if you see Bangladesh, Bhutan is almost at sea level. Suddenly it takes off to the Himalayas. It reaches 15,000 feet within a matter of about 100 kilometers. And then you hit the plateau of Tibet. And the Tibetan plateau there is higher than the western areas. And then you go down to the Kangai plains, right? So this is the cross section. So you find that Tibet is largely a plateau. Okay, so let's see Tibet. Yeah. Now, if you see Tibet, Tibet is well served by a network of roads which the Chinese have developed. The spinal road of Tibet is the Zining Golmud or Gormo to Naku and Lhasa. That's the central highway. It's called the Central Highway, right? And then from Lhasa, one road goes to Shigatse and then on to Xinjiang. It's called the Xinjiang Tibet Highway. It goes all along the LAC. It's about 100 to 150 kilometers behind the LAC. At places, it's just about 50 kilometers, right? And from Lhasa towards the east, one road goes to Ningchi and then goes to Kamdo. From Kamdo, there is two. One goes to Chengdu and the other goes to Kunming, right? This is called the Yunnan Tibet Highway or the Sichuan Tibet Highway, if you see onto the right of the map, right? Now, this again goes quite close to the LAC, right? Now, this map is wrong. This map shows Arunachal Pradesh also as part of, so we will leave it out, right? This is a Chinese map, but this is to just give you the road, this thing. alignments. And then there are two parallels to this Western Express Highway and the Eastern Highway. The Lhasa's Ningchi, Thamdo, and that is called the Eastern Highway, and the Lhasa Segatse is called the Western Highway, right? And then there's an offshoot to Kathmandu also, right? So this is the broad this thing. They have a railway which is called the Kangai Tibet Railway. Can we have that? Yeah, there's the Kangai Tibet Railway. It's a beautiful railway. They constructed. Hats off to the Chinese. From Xining again, everything comes from Xining to Gormo, and it comes right. They also have a pipeline along with this railway.
Okay.
And this has been constructed over permafrost constructions. That's a engineering marvel. There's no doubt about it. Okay. Now you can see how the thing runs. But what is important is if you have a look at the background, it's all flat. There are places which is this railway traverses absolute flat terrain. But it is on permafrost conditions because this Tibetan plateau itself is at 4,000 plus meters. Right. Now, I'd like to put in one thing. This is changing. With climate change, there's this railway line is going to get affected. Because permafrost conditions might change. How will this get affected is something which we have to watch. And this is going to trouble PLA because if this railway goes and the climate change takes effect and the permafrost conditions change, this railway will be defunct. I mean, just to put it in perspective, all you need to derail this railway is to invert the temperatures, local temperatures by about 8 to 10 degrees, which means that if you put fuel oil on any part of the permafrost area and light it up, it will change that railway. It's like mining that area. It's as simple as that. It's vulnerable, huh? I mean, people don't understand it. So this is as time goes, this is going to be their weak link, logistics. I'm not saying today it is not. Today it is not.
Today is not.
Unless the Chinese do something to do it, I don't know. I mean, there's something. Let's see how it goes out.
Opens up.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, this gives you an idea about the the Tibetan terrain. It's a flat plateau, but interspersed by high mountains. What you see in this is you see absolute flat land and with mountains in the background. But more importantly, you see the mountains, neither the flatlands or the mountains have snow. This is a windswept area, completely windswept area. Right? That doesn't mean it is warm, it is cold because there's a wind chill factor which kicks in heavily. So you have high altitude plus wind chill factor. Okay. So it's pretty miserable to stay there. Yeah, next. Right? Now there's no cover there. This is of Lhasa. Absolutely no vegetation, no cover. So there's no place to hide, there's no camouflage. So everything is in the open. It's like a tabletop. You can pick anything off from the air, from everywhere, satellite, everything. Okay. So there is no camouflage. You can't. So if you have to camouflage anything, you have to go underground or go into the folds of the ground. But how much can you do if it's a major offensive? You can't. So there's a problem. Okay. Yeah. Next. Right. On our side, the terrain is totally different. You have the highest motorable pass in the world called Umlingla. Okay. Now, besides Umlingla in that area, which is a little restricted area where everyone can't go, there are 3 passes which are open for public, which are the otherwise known as the highest passes in the world. Kardungla at 18,000 plus, Changla and Taglangla. These are the entrances to the Leh Valley, which everyone goes. Okay. So, if the PLA is coming from that side, from relatively flat areas, they have to get into some of the most rugged terrain. And to keep these passes open is not funny. Okay, or to close these passes is equally this thing. I'm not saying that we'll do it or we have to do it, but the terrain changes,
Hmm.
which people don't understand. Yeah. Look at this. Again, on our side, you'll find a lot of snow starts this thing. This is a picture of our side in summer. Yeah, there you will find that there is a certain effect of Tibet on our side, but not much, right? Not much, but the snow starts coming in, kicking in, right? Okay, next. And you'll find that, roads are winding, they're no more flat, they're no more flat lands, it's all steep. So your logistics, that side of the Himalayas and this side of the Himalayas are two different things. So if the Chinese are undertaking an offensive into your area, they'll have a logistics chain which is based on something up to the Himalayan crest line, and beyond the Himalayan crest line, the thing has to change. It's difficult. People glibly talk, but there's the thing. I mean, to elucidate, let me put it this way: beyond Tibet or in Tibet, beyond the Himalayan crest line, the Chinese can start concentrated. They can switch forces along the eastern and western highway wherever they want, and concentrate and get into any approach, whether into Eastern Ladakh, Sikkim, Bhutan, Arunachal, and all that. But then they start concentrated, end up dissipated because only one prong will go in.
Hmm.
That prong will be absolutely separate from all others.
Cut off, absolutely.
Cut off. And the opposite is true for us. We start split, but once you reach the Tibetan plateau, you can zoom on and concentrate on objectives from different sides.
Movement will be faster. Hmm.
It's not movement. You can execute a pincer, they can't.
Correct, yeah. Hmm.
Okay. You can approach an objective from 2 to 3 directions, but they can't. So there's a
In one
difference.
way. Hmm.
Yeah. And then the terrain on the Tibetan side is more stable, but on our side is not so stable. So there are penalties for that. There are penalties of logistics for them. They can't see, there's no observation. Getting targets is difficult because steep slopes, as I showed you in Sikkim, and they're all vegetated slopes. You can't make out targets. If a missile is coming or a round is coming, if it misses the target, it goes into a nala. You can't see it, it's ineffective. So the firepower becomes less effective on our side vis-a-vis their side. So there are huge problems for any PLA offensive if they have to come this side.
Thank you, sir, for taking us and giving us a brief about the entire terrain and some of the very peculiar features that you mentioned about our side and their side as well. And of course, they probably have certain advantages, but we also have counter advantages in that particular area, and that's something that you've elucidated pretty nicely. Um, I'd like to still ask you. So the Chinese are touted to have very nice infrastructure, connecting to border activities, connecting to the LAC, and the PLA has been able to mobilize pretty fast, and that's something that we've seen in the past sometime as well. What are the advantages and disadvantages of having this kind of infrastructure close to the LAC? And isn't it also vulnerable, these single straight roads?
See, they have developed the Eastern Highway and the Western Express Highway very well, and that allows them to mobilize anywhere they want it. They've got good connectivity with the Xinjiang. They've also got good connectivity to the Yunnan side and to the rear. So that gives them a fantastic mobility. But the thing is that this is their lifeline. Eastern Express Highway and Western Express Highway, if you can control and effect, get your firepower onto this, they can't go anywhere. And plus, like I said, Tibet is bare, which we saw. So there's no place to hide. If there is no strategic surprise, tactical surprise is very little. You can't. So anything is open. You can pick out where the deployment is, everything is, and within that area. They can't go behind the Western Express Highway and hide. They have to be this side, right? So you know what they are up to, right? And so, to that extent, their infrastructure will be vulnerable, especially to our air. Look, when you apply air power, it is not only on the airfields. You
Hmm.
apply it other places. If you can, in high altitudes, if you can destroy their logistics, they're done. Right now, that can't go anywhere. And how much can you put everything underground? Something has to.
Somebody has to come out.
No, some people have to fight outside. Yeah, yeah. Especially if you want to make major campaigns, small should put actions. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people would ask is that, how could they surprise us in Galwan and so on and so forth, because it's
See,
the size.
Galwan and all that, because there was friction was happening, small level friction was happening. It was
Correct.
not as if we didn't know it. We knew that the friction was happening.
Hmm.
What we lost sight of was the what happened. They were training there and then they came in. But equally, we could mirror the deployment as fast. So it's not a thing.
They were already very close, and we could actually mirror it
Yeah, yeah,
swiftly.
we could
So
mirror it. So we,
that tells you something, sir.
yeah, it does. There's no doubt.
So, you say you've lived in those areas. As a matter of
Yeah,
fact, you've served in that entire terrain. I've been there as a tourist just to walk around in a place like Pengongso or the Changla Pass and all that stuff. I remember taking a photograph close to the Changla Pass border post. Just
yeah.
getting out of the jeep and walking there was, I mean, mind-boggling. And here I was about 17, 18 at that time. So even young and fit and fine at that time. So living there itself, it's gonna be difficult. We also see reports of the Chinese sending across heated tents and oxygen chambers and the works in terms of the luxury. I think they've got the latest one video I saw was microwave ovens for their food. So yeah, interesting, very nice, good technology. But what are the challenges that the survival, just keeping your troops in that particular area, forget the fighting, just surviving in that area, what are the challenges that you will face?
Very difficult. You need good habitat, you need good food, you need acclimatization.
So
There's nothing which can beat acclimatization and the mental fortitude to be there, right? You don't need microwave ovens. Of course, you need them. It's good. It's good for the morale. But more importantly, the men have to get used to the fact that they have to live there through multiple acclimatizations. Okay, the first stage, second stage, third stage. And most importantly, you have to train. And the training is physical training and mental training. Okay, that's the fundamental. The second thing one has to realize, it's one thing to say I am acclimatized to stay in high altitude, but a second thing to say I can fight in high altitude. You have to train to fight. So that is something which is important because fighting involves mobility. Mobility means going cross country. The evidence so far in eastern Ladakh is that the PLA has not been able to do has not displayed cross country mobility on foot. Where there are no tracks, they have not been able to go. In Pangong So and Kailash Range and all, they were outflanked and outmaneuvered into high in this thing. So that is something they have to probably they will train. I'll right. So that is one thing. Second thing is when you live there, you need communications.
mm,
Communications are very difficult in those areas. It's one thing to say I live a cable, fiber optic cable and get through sets and all. It's difficult. They don't survive. They don't survive seasons. You have to change. You have to keep. One of the most difficult things in altitude is to maintain communications with your troops, who are especially in isolated pockets. And that's a challenge which I'm sure PLA is facing. And right, you can't say I'll always rely on space or satellite communication. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Okay. Now the problem with all these technological gizmos is you need energy. Where do you get fuel from? So that means you're getting fuel, you're getting diesel, you're getting fuel cells, whatever, batteries, solar, whatever. That means as you increase this, you're increasing your logistics load. As you increase your logistics load, the overall footprint of yours is going up there. Difficult, right? So that is what one has to take care in those areas. So, like I said, fundamental, it's one thing to live there, the other thing is to fight there. Plus the fact that there is going to be a high wind chill factor. So that means your habitat has to be good, your medical evacuation has to be good. Just give you a actual example. We've heard reports that last year a division which was inducted during the actual operations was de-inducted another camel. Why? We induct people for 2 to 3 years there. They have changed over within 1 year. That with to me it tells me that they're not fully prepared for high altitude warfare. They might get prepared. In the next 3-4 years, they'll get that operational experience, right? So that's a different story altogether. But then we'll see that, right? We'll see how PLA is able to handle this high altitude ability to fight in high altitudes. Then, like I said, ability to fight in Eastern Ladakh is different from ability to fight in Sikkim, is different from our ability to fight in Bhutan, is different from ability to fight in Arunachal. 3-4 different abilities.
It's a bit amazing when you hear something like that. So you also,
it's a fact.
When we were planning this talk, you also told me about a story that you had to be very precise about your inventories and your
Look, let me tell you, there was when I was in charge of the administration of one of these operational areas, I had to be clear that every post had onions, eggs, everything, and each kind of troops had the kind of food they wanted, right? See, because a lot of life there depends on your mental condition. And our men who are from the villages, they want a particular type of food. You have to give it to them. Otherwise, they can't fight. Then the fatigue factor, just for instance, in the Siachen Glacier, you can't exist there for more than 3 to 4 months. After that, your muscle starts wasting. So you have to get de-inducted. So your rotation of troops is very high. Okay. But the flip side is if you have existed and fought in Siachen Glacier, then you're one of the best soldiers going around. Okay. That isolation, battlefield isolation is very severe out there. Just imagine you're in a post and isolated, wind blowing, and you are only, you could get cut off. If tomorrow a chopper has to come and give you food, it doesn't come, your morale will go down. What about casevac? You will still have HAPO cases, high altitude pulmonary edema cases. You will have cases of deep vein thrombosis. You need medical personnel on each post. And you need ability to evacuate. You need ability. If you evacuate a guy, fine, but you have to ensure that chap is replaced. So you need to have replacements ready. So if a whole unit is de-inducted, another unit has to be inducted. So that means there's a training cycle going on behind. It's not easy. And the China PLA has been there only for 1 year. If they're looking at a major offensive, they have to be able to do more. And then more people you put in, the more logistics you need. And everything has a capacity and limiting factor out there.
That's interesting. So, I mean, we have our bases and all that stuff very close by. So, a medevac probably takes about 45 minutes to reach Chandigarh.
See, for us, let me tell you, you're right. From one of our posts, within a matter of 2 hours, a person is in Delhi or Chandigarh. Where will a Chinese guy go from there? You're the best of facilities in RR Delhi. He's there in 1 hour. He's in RR Delhi. This is practical. I'm telling you practically. From the glacier, a guy is heli-lifted or airlifted. Within 1.5 hours to 2 hours, he's on an operating table in Delhi. The best of hospitals. Now the Chinese, unless they've have one somewhere in wherever, we're talking about a different story.
And even there, so in the middle of nowhere, for example, Lhasa, that long highway that they've got, I mean, there's nothing there.
See, the one thing what people don't realize, and that's a problem for PLA, let's face it. They're fighting 6,000 kilometers away from their homeland
True.
with no local resources. And no, nothing, you get nothing. You have to hump everything 6,000 kilometers away. For us to take it to 3, 4, 500, 600 kilometers, we find it difficult. Just think of their logistics problem. I mean, the fact that they're doing it is great, but can they sustain this in war is a question mark. They might be able to, but I don't think they can. My own feeling is at this point of time, I doubt if they can. Maybe 4, 5 years, if they stay in the numbers in which they're staying, they'll get the capability, everything gets set, and if then they feel that they can, this thing, yeah, but in 4, 5 years, India will be different.
Correct.
Yeah.
Such a broad frontage you're trying to get.
Yeah. 3,000 kilometers. Yeah. And you can go anywhere that side also. I mean, let's be clear. This is non-defendable by anyone. We can't defend, they can't defend. If they take a slice, we can take a slice. It's only the political will to do so or not do so.
True. So also the man on the ground will be able to kind of prove the metal at that time.
Yeah.
So again, we spoke about the infrastructure, we spoke about the terrain, we spoke about, and this is a very clear understanding. And I don't think a lot of people understood the factor that the battle between India and China would be fought in the mountains. Those raging tank battles where a whole regiment of tanks is fighting with each other is not going to something that we're not going to see. Having said that, sir, I'd like you to spend some time on the challenges.
Yeah, let me talk about the tank factor. The tanks can go to only 2 places in the entire Himalayas. Only 2 places. We know that, they know that. Eastern Ladakh and some part of Sikkim, where the Tibetan plateau comes in across the projects into our territory. Otherwise, there's no tanks. Tanks and all won't make a difference. It's good old infantry and artillery and air power. These three will have to
rule the day, sir.
In this terrain. Yeah, rule the day.
I mean, even the mechanized forces would be very difficult to move around in certain areas.
No, out of question.
Sir. So, what would be the challenges that the weapon systems will face, as per se? I mean, you've been the Director General Artillery. Tell us about the artillery. Apart from that, of course, the other weapon systems as well.
See, generally, any weapon system will get additional range because the atmosphere is rarefied at 4,000 meters, 3,000, 4,000 meters. The range starts increasing. Anything between 25 to 40% range increases. A normal Bofors gun goes up to 42, 43 kilometers. Now, what happens at 42, 43 kilometers is that it sprays all around. It becomes inaccurate. So that means if you have to reach this target, you will have to fire more number of rounds. More number of rounds means more ammunition. More ammunition means more logistics. Lesser sustainability. So everything is a penalty. You reach further, but there's a problem. So the moment you reach further, there's a problem of observation. How will you observe the target? If it's far away. If you if you go further, your problems of communication. You have to communicate back to the guns where to fire. So all these things are all interlinked. Okay. So your ammunition is a problem, communication is a problem, observation is a problem. Then wherever there's snow or hills or steep slopes, if a miss is as good as a mile there, if the round doesn't land on the target, it's gone. You can't see it also. You will not even see the smoke. You don't know where it has gone. All this business of fire and forget and all this is all nice on ground. I mean, nice on planes, very fine, but not there. Okay, you can't. you can't. Then, if you want additional ammunition, where will you get it from? You have to get it from somewhere. So that means you have to get it on these narrow roads. And that ammunition has to be stacked somewhere. You need space, which is at a premium. If you have that space, which the PLA has a lot of space, wide open spaces. You get too much ammunition, everyone will know where it is. You'll get interested with, get exposed. Heavy equipment, artillery will get exposed. Rockets and all, you can't just fire and go vanish. If you fire, you're caught, and you can't. You can virtually. I can sitting here in Chennai. I can make out where these taps are going to fire from. Approximately, they'll have to have a hide. They'll come forward. They'll fire and run back. You can virtually track out which route they're going, so you can catch them. I mean, you need a lot of training to fight in high altitude. Look, let me tell you, this it applies to us also.
True.
Okay, and the kind of modern warfare we are talking has never been fought in Himalayas. The only time we have fought is in Kargil, where we have been successful. We had out of box solutions. So direct firepower is important.
But wasn't that line of sight firing, sir, rather than?
Yeah, that's direct fire. Okay, where you can see and fire. That's the worst. So if someone tells me, "Oh, fire and forget," you can fire and forget. That fire won't reach there. It will not reach the target. Okay, so there's this thing, and then you need to have map grids on the other side. It's not simple. That way, Chinese have. I think the PLA has started gridding our side. I don't know whether we are doing it or not, but they have started because I saw reports of that. So to that extent, they are more conscious of this thing. Right. There's another thing, this ammunition, it can get buried in snow when you fire. Okay. There's yet another thing which one has to understand. The biggest logistics loads in any battle in high altitudes is ammunition, artillery ammunition. Now, to start a campaign, you need X amount of ammunition. Normally, people take it up and stack it up there, right, and stock it up. But how much ammunition can you stock for a long-term battle? Because ammunition starts deteriorating. After some time, it loses its shelf life. It becomes erratic. Frozen ammunition, to make it fire, it's a problem. So you need extensive stocking facilities. Even if with the stocking facilities, deterioration takes place. It's a costly game to go say, I will attack India. I don't know how good PLA are, but these are the problems they're going to have. So if you can do your peacetime intelligence, you can disrupt this.
This you spoke about Eastern Ladakh, sir. What about,
same thing? Even there also.
with
the
high
Tibetan
amounts of
Plateau,
moisture?
the Tibetan Plateau, this side and that side is the same. It is this side of the Himalayas which it differs.
The firing capability in high amounts of moisture will also change, sir?
Yeah. That is different and this is different. The behavior of firepower that side in Eastern Ladakh and the behavior of firepower in Bhutan is different. Bhutan, Sikkim, Arunachal is different. So, but then they are vulnerable because Tibet is a flat plateau. It's easier. This side is difficult.
Yeah, here it is full of vegetation, so hiding places are much higher.
Yeah.
No wonder they've got the last time when we studied the maps of their deployment. No wonder they've got so much deployment within the east. But
No, they have deployments. I'm sure they are aware of this. They're not fools. We are also aware of it. We are also aware of the difficulties in firing, and they also so are they. That's why they're scaring us with all those videos that Global Times Fellow puts out. But we shouldn't get scared. We should be confident that our army is strong, our Air Force is strong to do what it has to do. This thing is to tell people that it is not a cakewalk for China. It's a very difficult task to come and it's not a matter of numbers that China has so many guns and I have so many guns and I can't fight.
How you use those guns?
Like I told you, 60% of the plan, it depends on the Himalayas. Maybe more. in this case.
In Punjabi,
Yeah.
there's a saying, na, Rab rakha sir.
Uh,
Khatam kahani.
You see, they say in the land of Lama, don't be a Gama. Okay. So we should be very careful when we talk very loosely about all these things. Yeah.
So I'd like to ask you a last question about. I mean, you specialize in aerospace, and you're a professor in the IIT Madras as well. So I'm going to keep the air question for the last, and I'd just still like to ask you uh, the weapon systems itself, the usage, as a matter of fact, for the infantry as well. We've heard stories about
Hey, yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah. Please, please.
Battle of the Bulge, the guys had to literally heat up their guns on raw open fire and shoot them. That temperatures over there were -15, -20. Here we are sitting on, I mean, God alone knows what right now. Um, the even so, what would the effect be on the soldier? One, he has to carry that much more clothing, that much more supplies, and a heavy frozen weapon. So how does that work?
It doesn't work well at all. In Siachen, people used to heat their, weapons on stoves or even ammunition on stoves and fire. Otherwise, nothing will work. Same thing will happen there. Nothing is different. In fact, in certain places, Eastern Ladakh and even in Sikkim, Bhutan, places are worse than in Siachen conditions. So this is a live problem. It's not only this. What about vehicles? Diesel vehicles, everything gets frozen.
Yeah.
So you have to use high altitude diesel. What is high altitude diesel? High altitude diesel is not bloody manna from heaven. It is K oil. As you keep going higher, you keep adding more K oil to the level that with super high altitudes, you have more kerosene oil and less diesel, and which means that your engines don't have compression ratios because the oxygen is not there. It will not burn, and if the fuel doesn't burn, you do not get power out of that vehicle. And if you do get power out of the vehicle, it's going to consume all your fuel, and your mileage is going to be less. If your mileage is less, that means more logistics. Have I given you the entire chain?
What about the
And
engine
at
itself?
the
Does it survive?
at the end of the it will not survive. At the end of the thing, in that season or next season, that engine will pack off. You have to get another engine. Oils freeze. You need different grade of oils completely. You need a different kind of maintenance in that area. It takes time to fight there. People glibly say, "I'll put 10,000 vehicles." All the 10,000 vehicles will become junk out there in no time. Your greases are different. Your lubes are different, right? So, yeah, look, I'm not saying that PLA can't do it. Please, this thing they'll put artificial intelligence, they'll put natural intelligence, and do something, and they will fight. There's no doubt. But it's not going to be a cakewalk for them. That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay, they can be interfered with very heavily. And plus, remember, they have to cross the Sangpo bridges, right? They have to cross the
Yeah, that's
Eastern Highway and the Western Highway. That is all open. It's all open for interference.
targeting that area is much easier, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, when you go to some of these places, you can see miles to the rear.
It won't be the same case towards this side because
Yeah.
it's.
I remember going on top of Kailash Range and seeing right up to the Western Express Highway. You can make out.
Wow, that's fast. About 100 odd
Yeah, it's fine.
kilometers.
You can see. It's absolutely clear.
Sheesh. So as I said, the last question is on air power, manned, unmanned, even a, let's say, a artillery shell. What kind of
Yeah.
effect does this area have on air power
See,
on both the sides? Sir?
anything which flies in the air is flying through rarefied atmosphere. The moment it is rarefied atmosphere, there's no drag on it, so it will get extra range. For manned or even fixed wing or rotary wing, everything, there's no lift. If you don't have lift, it can't take off. See, it needs, the wings have to generate lift. If there's rarefied air, there's no density, there's no lift, so there's no capacity. Okay, even for missiles, there's a problem. You will not get control that easily. Okay, that's why they'll go Ori. Missiles will go Ori in altitude. It's a fact. Unfortunately, all this is not documented for the simple reason that we have never fought in altitude. It's nice to say I have a 300 multi-barrel rocket system. Will it reach the target? It will go 300 kilometers and land 50 kilometers away from the target. Just think, science has not developed so far to be so precise that you can predict where a thing from skies can fall down. We've been sending spacecraft up to from 60s to the moon and back. Every time that space shuttle comes down, it has got all technology with it. Yet that space shuttle lands in some open ocean, and there are ships around to pick it off because they don't know where exactly it's going to land. So how is it going to happen in high altitude that it will land on a particular target? Has anyone thought of this? Fundamental. I'm not talking of great science. So it is not easy for missiles to hit the targets. Okay, airplanes can't take off. If you have to take off, you need longer runways. If you need longer runways, you need more fuel. You have to have less all-up weight, which means either you have less fuel or you have less ammunition. One of the two. If you have less fuel, you have less range. If you have less ammunition, you are less effective. That means your turnaround time has to be more. You have to send someone else. Your air efficacy is low. Okay, your missiles are going to be Ori. That's the problem which PLA is going to face. And plus your entire runway, everything is exposed. So you have to dig in everything. It's a costly affair to dig in everything. It's one thing to say, oh, China has put everything underground. Now, the moment you go underground, there are other problems. Okay, and that means you have to make all that. You're spending. It's economy, yeah.
Ventilation, this, that, 50,000 things, yes.
Yeah. Right. So that's all there underground. You might go underground, but it's at a great cost. Okay. So all this, then there's something very funny which happens. It's called clear air turbulence. What is clear air turbulence? In summer, a runway heats up. It's like a mirror, and it throws up. So you can't land. If you land, you can't take off, and which means that you need to have minimal loads for landing and taking off in summer, in high altitudes. I mean, especially in the super high altitudes. So that means during daytime, virtually air operations are out. Okay, it's only at night you can do all that, or early morning and late in the evening. And how much air operations can you do at night and day in mountains is a big question mark because no one has done it. It's nice to say I have 24/7 battlefield capability and all. Have you done it? It's one thing to fly and second thing to do operational flying in those areas. Okay. Then there is turbulence, wind-based turbulence, which happens in valley to valley. One valley is a different turbulence, the other valley is a different turbulence. So there are issues. Then there's this jet stream which flows in the Himalayas. The jet stream starts in September, October and goes to February. And it runs over the greater Himalayas beautifully. It's a tube of 50 kilometers above you, where high jet streams are used by long haul aircraft. When you get into jet stream, you get,
good tailwind,
more speed and, tailwinds. But just think of a UAV entering the jet stream, it just gets blown away. Just think of a missile going into the jet stream, it will never get controlled. So there are major issues in jet stream conditions, in turbulent conditions, in poor runway conditions, to carry out an air campaign. I don't know whether how efficacious it would be, right? So the PLA has to fight in this terrain. Are they equipped to fight? They could be. They're preparing for it. Are they preparing for it? Yes. Will they master it? Only time will tell. We have not been able to master it completely, but whatever level of experience we've got, it's not just the experience is just not of the man on the ground fighting. It is that entire machinery behind which has to sustain
Behind,
that
of
man.
course, yes.
Right? We've gained this experience, with air operations in the Siachen Glacier, Kargil, and in those areas where we had air maintained posts and things like that. Okay. PLA has just come in the numbers it has come now. Earlier they were never there.
And
So
we've got
there are
20
question
years.
marks. Yeah, there are question marks on this entire capability at this point of time. Maybe 2 to 3 years from now, they get solutions to the things, they might change. But then in 2 to 3 years, I'm sure we'll also change.
We've got 40 years, almost close to 40 years of fighting experience in
Experience,
IRCT.
yeah. There's no doubt. That is invaluable because you start doing things by,
Naturally.
naturally. The reactions come naturally, right? Like I said, what happened in 62 will not happen now. We
62
fought
was
like the
also a
British Army.
case of morale, whole lot of other
Lot
things.
of other things. We fought something different, but now it is not so. The Indian Army has changed. The Indian Army has different experience. The PLA has changed. The PLA has different experience. It's a differently organized army. But then, will they fight that big war? I don't know. I mean, I don't think what they've written. That's something we'll discuss in the next episode.
Next, yes. Their own
Yeah.
doctrines say no, localized
Yeah.
wars. So probably for a reason.
Yeah,
But
we'll see. We'll talk on that later.
something very interesting
Yeah,
that you mentioned about drones that they fly
yeah.
around.
You have to have lightweight drones.
Yeah.
Again, I've heard that the PLA has gone in for lightweight titanium based drones. The problem with lightweight titanium drones is you can't control them. They're light. It's like controlling a paper in air. If you don't have it light, the operating range is less.
Might not just take
So
off in
drones
that area.
you can't have high level drones flying all around. So it is restricted. Drone warfare, the way we think it will happen between Azerbaijan and Armenia, might not happen there. It is not for one moment to say that drone warfare will not happen there. It will happen. We need to have drones for attack. We need to have drones for defense. But will it impact the battlefield the way it impact other places? No. Things will be different.
Swarm drones and stuff like that. Yeah,
We'll see. But right, swarms also it's difficult to communicate and thing, right? So let us not imagine that all Chinese warfare capabilities, which you keep seeing every day through, will manifest itself on ground here. It will not. And the most important thing is the man on the ground. That guy has to be. Let me tell you, the man on the ground, our infantry soldier is the salt of the earth. He'll fight for that land because it's his land.
Yeah.
He has this SSF boy sitting next to him. He knows to speak to people there. People there support him. There is an MP from that area who will be standing there to ensure that he supports the Indian Army.
That we see along the border. We see that. Yes.
Yeah. Will that happen for the Chinese? This Han boy, single boy coming from so far. We'll talk about that later. From so far in a land which is alien to him, will he have that same thing? Again, all this talk is not for small campaigns. It is for extended wars if they happen.
Even small campaigns, I'm sure a lot of these things will come into play.
That we'll talk differently. But this is to give you more of the terrain and the feel of the terrain.
I guess the next time when we are having this discussion, this should be a base in terms of what both the armies actually face and I'd
Yeah.
like to mention here
Yeah.
that no one time we are trying to say that Indian Army has a very, very smooth sail. It's not. It's horrible actually in some places. But
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. One of the worst things to see is a cold related casualty, right? And it happens.
and it's pretty
Uh,
fast.
yeah, and I have, when you accompany a body back home, it's not very great. The feeling is horrible.
I guess we have that feeling, so the Chinese don't. So I guess that's one thing
No,
that
no,
we
no,
can
no, no.
get to.
Let's grant it. They might be having. I don't know about them,
So
but
the
I
morale
know.
goes down. So you
Yeah,
used to have a guy right next to you. He's not there today without any experience.
every day we lost a man in high altitude due to the weather was a day of sorrow for us when I was in various appointments there.
And we've heard reports of the Chinese soldiers having a lot of trouble. As a matter of fact,
Yeah, they'll also have problems. There's no doubt about it.
yeah, we've also had a general who has, I mean, uh, you know, has been put across as not well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
so this has been an insightful conversation, and I think people who are going to listen through the entire thing would get a very clear picture of what we stand in terms of heated war between both the countries, and that's something that we must understand when we talk about the India-China relations. Of course, Pakistan is something I think everybody understands. A tank battle here, a localized battle there, and a thrust towards Sialkot and this and that. It's been done before, but this particular battle has not been fought. Everybody will say 62, as we mentioned earlier. 62 was a different game altogether. The times were different, the equipment was different, the technology was different, and most and foremost, the morale was different. Today, it is not the case. It's going to be a very, very different battle. Human waves to mechanize for the Chinese forces, and for us to a very low and badly equipped army to a, becoming a very modern army and with a huge amount of experience. I think that will play a huge role. Thank you, sir, for taking us through this entire story. I think it's going to be an eye opener for anybody who watches it. Till next time, sir, when we talk about how the PLA will fight, what are their doctrines, and so on and so forth. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Thank you.